I'm Jennifer Reynolds.
And I'm Kelly Ogle. We both heard it. Like most Oklahoma City residents, we heard the bomb go off April 19th. It shook the windows even 10 miles away.
We could see the smoke coming from downtown Oklahoma City, but when our helicopter passed right in front of the Murrah building for the first time, our hearts were in our throats. We had so many questions. Is it the federal building? What happened? Where are all the people who were inside?
What we saw that morning was the worst one man can do to another. What we saw in the days that followed was the best. What you're about to see is some of both.
For 5 days solid in April of 1995, News 9 was in continuous coverage from those first frantic moments right after the blast to the rescue efforts that went on for days. Our reporters and photojournalists recorded some of the darkest days in American history. But there are also stories of courage and strength and love that must be shared too.
Over these last 5 years, we have come to know those who died, those who survived, and those whose lives were forever changed April 19th. It is in their honor that we remember.
This is a Newsline 9 Memorial Day special. Terror hits home, a time to heal.
Good evening, and thank you for joining us tonight on this Memorial Day like no other Oklahoma has ever seen. Tonight, we're going to be introducing you to several people we call heroes. It's a title they accept reluctantly. Some of them you may feel like you already know. By the end of the half hour, you'll know them all just a little bit better. Our first hero tonight wears a badge of honor. Sergeant John Avery with the Oklahoma City Police Department. First of all, I guess take us back to April 19th. What were you doing just before the bomb went off?
April 19th, I was assigned to move our DNA lab. We're opening a new DNA lab, and I had dressed down in blue jeans so I could move our equipment from the storage area in the police station to the new lab across the street. And we have labs in the basement, and we have labs in the police station. I actually thought one of the labs had blown up. That was my first impression, or maybe somebody had just actually blown up the police station. And so I ran outside and looked at the police station, and it was still standing. And I scanned the sky, and I saw this big white pillar of smoke going up in the air, a pillar of dust or something going in the air. And I realized that there was an explosion somewhere in the northeast part of downtown Oklahoma City. A man walked up to me and said there was a daycare center inside the building, and so I just crawled through the first window I saw there on the northwest side of the federal building. It was so dusty you could hardly breathe, and I heard a baby crying. And we stopped and started digging under the rocks where we heard the baby cry, and we uncovered the baby. And while we was uncovering it, we found two in this one hole that we was digging, about 3 to 4 inches under the rocks. Some of the concrete we was lifting off of the babies was so heavy it took two of us to pick them up and lay them to the side. The first baby, the one that's crying, Sergeant Helmuth took that baby and left the way he knew how to come in the building. I picked up the second baby, and which was Bailey, and exited the building with her.
Did you find yourself having to talk about this stuff quite a bit in order to get through it, or did you?
I didn't have a chance. They took the picture of me. The photographer took the picture that everybody saw, and the next morning I went to work as my regular job, and they told us not to go anywhere, stay around the station, so if they needed us, they could utilize us. But right now they didn't have anything for us to do. So I stayed at the office, and at 11:30 I was eating dinner, and I'd told very, very few people that I'd even been to the building. It's something that I was keeping very private to myself, and I was very sad. I was not very active that day. And I can't remember who it was. Anyway, one of the sergeants called me and on the telephone said, "John, did you carry a baby out of the building yesterday?" And I said, "Yes, I did. Why?" And he said, "Well," he said, "there's a picture in the Daily Oklahoman." And he said, "Let me call you back." And 2 or 3 minutes he called me back, and he said, "John, your picture's all over the world." And I said, "You're kidding." He says, "No." He said, "It's serious." And he said they've been looking for whoever this officer was all day long. He said that they had no idea who it was.
You, later on, then you met Bailey's mother.
That's correct.
Very emotional situation.
It's probably one of the best things ever happened to me in my life.
Really?
It's still emotional to me. It still brings out the emotions in me, but
thank you so much for getting her out of there. Thank you so much for getting her out. No. At least she's out of there.
I learned there that I can go talk to anyone that's having problems. And until this time in my life, if someone was having some real serious problems, had lost anybody in their family, I wasn't able to, I didn't know what to say to them. Yeah. And since this time, I have called people up, I've been to their homes, and I take time out to go visit people that are hurting. And so the meeting of her is what changed my life as far as being able to handle that, not what I saw in the building or did in the building. It's the way she treated me when I walked up there. You know, she said, thank you, thank you, thank you. And I was really surprised because I knew I brought the baby out. I didn't think it was, in fact, I knew it wasn't alive. And I didn't know what the mother would say. But
you were afraid maybe at first that, you know, that you had failed her, that she would...
That she would feel like I failed her, yes. Yeah. And I was extremely worried about that. And I didn't know what I was going to say to her. And you don't have to say anything. And that's what I've learned, is you don't have to say anything to anybody that's hurting, just be there. And I've been hurting, and there's been thousands of people there for me over this deal. And I've learned that as they come to me, the ones that don't say anything sometimes are the ones I like, they've done me the best. They just stand there and look at me with a tear in their eye, and it says, you know, I'm not the only one, and it has helped, yes.
John, we started the show talking about heroes. How do you consider yourself a hero? I mean, a lot of people do.
I don't feel like a hero, but I found out real fast that when people said something like to me, if I thought it hurt their feelings because they wanted something to hang on to. And so I've accepted what people are calling me without arguing about it, but in my heart, I still feel like I've done no more than what anybody else would have done in my situation. I think a hero is somebody that does something that nobody else would do. And I saw lots of policemen in there. I saw lots of firemen going in there. I saw lots of civilians going in that building. Something that everybody does doesn't make you a hero. It's something that nobody else will do. So no, I don't feel like it. But if you want to call me that, I accept it, and thank you for it, and we'll go on my way with it.
Many of the people who went in the building that day weren't wearing uniforms. They weren't being paid to do what they did. They simply saw what needed to be done and did it. Joey Fansler was on his way to roof a house that morning. He was like hundreds of other ordinary people who had to perform extraordinary deeds.
So we got down to about 4th and Robinson. The windows were blowing out everywhere. People were running around everywhere. So I told my little brother, who was with me, I said, man, you know, this is unbelievable. I thought it was a boiler that had blown up, you know. And then we saw what had happened, and we jumped out of the truck and run back up there, and people were just everywhere. It was, you know, pelted with glass. The guy had been shot with shotguns, and people are just, you know, havoc and mania, you know. They were havoc everywhere, you know, and just people everywhere, you know, running, screaming, bleeding, you know, asking for help. There was just so many people, you know, hurt, and so many people needing help that, you know, there was no way you could just stand there and, you know, rubberneck. We run up to the front of the federal building, and a black guy in a Air Force suit, I believe, or a Marine, maybe, I don't know. He come out, and he had dirt all over him, and he was saying, oh, help me, please help me get these people out of here, you know. So we run up to about the third floor, I guess, and we couldn't go any further because all the stairwells were collapsed, and that bomb swept through that building. You know, there was no real way in. You know, there was just debris and rubble that had blown everything from the north side of the building all the way through the building. We had to dig us a path to get down, you know, into the first and second floor. I was going, the children are here on the second floor in the nursery, and I was going, oh my God, you know. So we went in there, and we were all, you know, everybody, there was probably 25 or 30 people, a whole bunch of firemen, highway patrol, Oklahoma City police. And there was a whole bunch of individuals in there trying to, you know, you just didn't know where to start. You know, it was just so wrecked and so demolished, you know, that everything was air conditioning ducts, lights, all the electrical, you know, the mechanic, all the walls were blown out. Just looking for some place to start, you know, looking for somebody. Well, you know, they were all under all that, you know, and saw a mother with her little, I guess it was a mother and a child, you know. It's a black lady and her little baby. And those were the first ones we found. And it was just right at the entrance of the daycare center. They were there, and just everything was all on top of them, you know. And we just dug them out from underneath there. Then we went to looking for other little ones, and I found 3 or 4 of the little guys, you know. Bless their little hearts, you know. They were just, you know, they never knew a thing, though, you know. It was all over so fast, you know, they never felt a hint of pain, you know. It was just like a candle. It's burning and then it's gone. They were with God after that, you know, so that's the only consolation we have, is to know that they're in a better place now than where we are. That's all we have to deal with now is the memories. You had to, there was so much rubble and so much stuff on top. It was just so, you were waist deep in it, you know, you were knee deep in it. I got cuts all over my shins and my hands, you know, from digging through the stuff. And they were underneath all that stuff, so that's where you had to look, you know. You had to dig down to the floor, you know, and oh Lord, it was just unbelievable. At that point, I felt like nothing in this building's coming out alive, you know. This is it. Whatever was coming out of here alive walked out of here, you know. And that's pretty much, in essence, what it all boiled down to being. Thank God there was a couple of them that they pulled out of the basement, you know, a couple of little girls there, but, you know, the smoke hadn't even settled yet, you know, and I was just going, good Lord, you know, this is just complete death, you know. These people didn't deserve this, you know. That was the devil's hand, you know, casting a dagger of death into the heart of the United States of America. The mothers that lost their children, the children that lost their mothers, the fathers that lost their wives, the grandparents that lost their grandchildren, you know. Just the list goes on and on, you know, and just being there doing the things that they're supposed to do to be a good citizen, you know. And they're working, doing the right thing, you know. Now they're dead because of it, you know. It's just unbelievable, you know. I sure wished I could have. I would have felt more like a hero, or, you know, or something if I could have carried one of those babies out of there alive, you know. So if there could have been anything like that, you know. But that was what everybody was working for, you know, help somebody, bring somebody out alive, you know. That was what we were all about. That was what everybody was all about. I'd just like to thank all the people of Oklahoma for, you know, pitching in and taking care of business, you know, and doing what needed to be done in such a beautiful manner, you know, just get in there and handle the deal, you know.
Good evening, everyone. We're glad you've joined us. I'm Kelly Ogle.
And I'm Jennifer Reynolds. April 19th, 1995.
The date marks the worst U.S. terrorist attack in history, the bombing of the Alfred P. Murrah building in downtown Oklahoma City.
The explosion shook central Oklahoma, killed nearly 170 people and injured more than 400 others. And it forever altered our sense of security and innocence.
On this Memorial Day, a day to remember our dead, Newsline 9 dedicates the next hour to the bombing victims, their families, and to the heroes involved in the rescue.
This special report begins shortly after 9 a.m., April 19th, 1995.
This is a Newsline 9 Memorial Day special. Terror hits home.
Side of the federal building has been blown off.
Holy cow.
Ambulance told IMSA there'll be a mass unit dispatch.
Tremendous blast came through the windows, blew us out of our chairs onto the floor.
24 acres, we're 97, we got damage and injuries all up and down Broadway.
I thank the Lord that I wasn't sitting at my desk at that time, because that portion of the building is gone.
Did every available information you can get, fire everybody.
They are bringing people out that are just covered in blood. Ambulance crews have been arriving for the last 10 minutes, and they are going into the building.
The whole back of the building just fell in on us.
This one, we have got a lot of children hurt over here at the YMCA also.
What's happening? You know, it was like it happened in slow motion.
All around us there are dazed people, some with blood, some the shirts hanging off of them, glass, debris everywhere, fires burning in the parking lot. The police and emergency crews are talking about moving us back because of the danger of a possibility of another explosion. The devastation at the Alfred P. Murrah Federal Building appears to be almost total.
I've got 6 or 7 people down in the 100 block in Northwest 6. I need ambulances.
Don't know what happened, just a blast.
Just a tremendous explosion. The ceiling and the windows came in. Definitely, boom.
I was falling, then I hit, and I was dazed for a minute or a few seconds, and I realized there had to be an explosion or something.
We got them trapped all the way on the 7th floor. They're tying sheets together now, trying to climb down the sheets on the 7th floor.
My entire staff of about 7 people is gone. It's gone.
Debris everywhere down here, smoke billowing into the air. The large church at the corner of 4th and Harvey, all the stained glass windows have been blown out of the east side of the building. Again, it is chaos down here.
Be advised, the fire department in the basement of the federal building, there's a children's center, and we need to get the fire department officials up here as quick as we can.
Can you tell me your name? Can you tell me your name? Is there someone there?
My daughter's one, and she's in there.
Adam 38, are you on the north side of the federal building with people buried?
I'm on the east side of the federal building. It's collapsed.
You went to the nursery?
Yeah, we were pulling. Well, we pulled 5 little kids out and a couple of ladies.
All we can do is just be of as much assistance as we can to those who are injured, and try to get them to some medical care.
You're doing a great job. We all of us in Oklahoma City, thank you for what you've done today.
Well, thank you.
And what many other people like him are doing. The devastation again in downtown Oklahoma City is absolutely incredible. The Alfred Murrah building is almost gone completely. Half of it has collapsed. Numerous injuries all over town. adults, children. There's glass everywhere. Virtually every building in downtown Oklahoma City appears to have been damaged in some way.
Let's move out! I've got 2 down in the 100 block at Northwest 6th and the C.R. Anthony building that are not moving. They're unconscious and not moving. The ones I can, I'm going to transport to a hospital. I've got about 6.
We're going to go to 5th in Oklahoma. We will first have the ER people in their groups of 4.
It's just a shuttle of ambulances, one after another, bringing in victims. We have the latest information now. 60 adults have been brought in. There, you're looking at video now that we just brought back here to the
newsroom. Be careful. Let's just warn them now, Cynthia, that this is raw tape that we shot at the hospital, and we have not censored this in any way, so you may see some graphic stuff.
Yeah, they're pretty much, the victims have broken bones, cuts and bruises and burns. 60 adults are being taken care of now at University Hospital. At Children's Hospital, there are 10 children and 5 adults at that facility. They range in fair to critical condition, and a sad note here, the ages are from 2 months to 18 years old at Children's Hospital.
They just told us that they'd found 80 people and only 2 were alive, and they told us all to go home.
It's called Condition Black, and we have, 30 or 40 different hospital personnel who are standing outside of the emergency room waiting for the ambulances to come up, and they've got their teams ready, and they take the people and they get in and they get them treated.
I'm there bringing out bodies of many people, and it's awful hard on the officers and everybody that's had to bring the bodies out, and the people that are tagging, and just in general everybody. It's like a war zone down there.
But you've seen the pictures from the Murrah building. It would be a miracle of biblical proportion that someone did not die inside that building. My feeling is that many people did. And many people also are in very critical condition out here on the streets of Oklahoma City.
Let's move these people at least to the middle of the street, because we got glass fixing to follow us from behind, okay?
Ocean 2 headquarters, there's people trapped in this situation on like 6th floor.
Up here on the 5th floor, right on the end. I can walk from here, from my office to the door where I normally enter, and there's nothing there anymore. It's from me to these individuals that the building's gone.
It's just astonishing to me that an evil human being would do this to children and other innocent people. It's just absolutely astonishing, especially here in the middle of Middle America.
That's the thing that's going through my mind right now. This is something that happens somewhere else. This is something that happens in places like Beirut, places far, far away, places with strange sounding names. It's not something that's supposed to happen in places like Oklahoma City. It's not something that's supposed to happen at home.
This is just a few moments ago.
People running north away from the federal building. You see them waving people off, saying, "Get away from the building."
Another bomb, move back.
My mom's in there.
Just when we were trying to carry the people out and they hollered bomb, and we can't leave we had a lady in there that was still alive, but we didn't want to leave her because, and they were yelling at us to come on and get out of there, but when you got a live person, it doesn't make no difference, It doesn't make any difference. If you got a live person in there, you try to stay with them, and the worst part was having to leave her, but we did go back and get her, and she is alive, and she's on our way to one of the hospitals. All I can tell you, man.
Our rescue crews now are back in. We've got people we're talking to through the floors.
The debris you see laying out in the streets that's in piles and stuff, it's exactly like that in the buildings. It's dark, it's dusty, there's bodies, there's chaos everywhere.
From the explosion, from the way that the explosion had gone up the building and also out, it looks like it may have been in a vehicle parked in front of the building. Now, of course, they won't know that for some time.
You wonder how somebody could be so heartless as I mean, you're talking not only human lives, but adult lives, but you're talking about children. There's no compassion for anybody. And, you know, this is just a cold-blooded killing.
We have at this time no assumptions with regard to who caused this particular bombing. And we have had hundreds, if not thousands, of leads.
It is as far as I know, the most serious attack on civilians in the American history.
But it's going to be a long, tedious task. We'll be here for days doing this. You know, this rescue effort is probably going to take about 3 or 4 days at least, so around the clock. We'll not stop tonight. We've got lights and generators and everything coming in, and we've got every Oklahoma City fire unit in town is down here. We've got off-duty people deployed throughout the stations. Metro area departments are down, and good cooperation through all the emergency service agencies.
The building is now illuminated. They've got spotlights on the building. There is a large crane in front of it. This is all part of the search efforts. They are not giving up efforts tonight. They are not giving up hope.
I just spoke with one of the rescue workers who has just come out of the federal building. He says that there is one woman who is in the basement. She's pinned in there, and they can hear her. They can talk to her.
The wind has picked up out here. It is pouring down rain. The wind is blowing, and there you can see various things falling off the building. As we said just moments ago, people, there you can see chunks of it, huge chunks flying away.
Finally, let me say that I ask all Americans tonight to pray. To pray for the people who have lost their lives, to pray for the families and the friends of the dead and the wounded, to pray for the people of Oklahoma City. May God's grace be with them. Meanwhile, we will be about our work.
All the counselors and other professional people here in that row will meet where?
A complete list of the wounded, which has been taken to area hospitals, and a list of the victims that they've been identified. Okay? Thank you.
Most of them that are here right now that I've talked to have already been to St. Anthony's, and they're not on the list.
People like the Cooper family.
Whenever I found out, we first went to Children's, and we've just been hopping around the city trying to find out if John Doe baby is ours, and we've come up negative every time.
Every day, I'm gonna drop him off, and I go see him every day at lunch, and today I didn't get to go.
Little Antonio didn't make it. Neither did Bailey Allman, the baby in the now world-famous picture.
Well, her birthday was one day before the explosion. She was 1. This is her picture. She was so happy. She always smiled all the time. She was the sweetest little girl. She loved everyone. She was so sweet.
This picture was a way that it could be a little bit more comforting. 1,000 thoughts must be racing through her mind. Erin Allman's 1-year-old baby is dead, and she's about to meet the 2 men who risked their lives trying to save her little girl.
Thank you so much. Thank you so much for getting her out of there.
The first to arrive, Oklahoma City Police Sergeant John Avery.
Thank you so much for getting her out. No. At least she's out of there.
Sergeant Avery raced into the federal building after the explosion and pulled little Bailey out of the rubble.
She didn't suffer then, huh?
Do what?
She didn't suffer then at all.
No, in fact, when we dug her out, she wasn't the baby crying. There was a baby next to her crying.
That baby's all right? It's not all right.
Sergeant Avery continued searching for more children and handed Bailey to Oklahoma City firefighter Captain Chris Fields.
How you doing? Good to see you.
Thank you so much.
So sorry. The weather didn't take it through.
Thank you for getting her out of there as fast as you could.
He got out and getting me, and there was nothing we could do.
I know. I'm gonna miss her.
Here's the man right here that got her out, though, buddy. Got good to meet you, buddy. Thank you. Really, you bet.
A rare moment when two rescuers are reconnected. The kind words and tears, some their own tears, are reminders of why they do what they do. It's their time to be human.
When I was holding her, I think of my son. I see my son, and when I get home and see my son, I see her daughter. So
I went home last night and hugged my kids for hours, and we went out late and then went home and hugged them again. And in fact, I just talked to them on the way down here, and they just said, "Daddy, please hurry and get home. Daddy, please come on home." That's all they can think about right now, to get me home.
Do you feel better now that you've met them?
Yeah.
What's it like?
At least I know, you know, and they're really nice people. And that one, the fireman, has a 2-year-old little boy. So I feel a lot better knowing that they were that nice to help her.
We have not recovered any more children. We still have the number at 13, and all 13 of those children have been identified.
To me, every knock on the door and every telephone call is somebody else who cares, and every flower in this house, every plant in this house, you know, to me it's just a symbol of love, and it just shows how much the people care, because they're coming from everywhere. And to me, that's one of the things that's keeping me going.
And that's not easy when you consider her loss. Edie Smith's only 2 children were killed in the explosion, 2-year-old Colton and 3-year-old Chase.
I woke up this morning and I thought that today was going to be a good day, you know. Today was going to be a good day, and I didn't think I had any tears left in me, and I've cried several times already today.
It's just a heartbreaking thing. Because someone could do that to children.
The cries of their son Christopher are far better than the silence facing parents who lost children in the bombing.
And Christopher is now got severe burns on the face and everywhere. But is still the luckiest baby in the entire daycare center.
Can you open your eyes and look at Mommy?
Christopher is one of 6 children in the Federal Building Daycare Center who survived the blast.
Christopher injuries like bruises in the brain, heart, lung, ear tumor, eardrums, got holes in it, which is expecting, is not going to happen. But those things will be healed if the time allowed. So we're just waiting for time.
Time that passed ever so slowly for families still waiting.
Every second is just, I just think about my poor wife. Just wanting to end this, and again, just get her to put her to rest, because she was just so beautiful.
Beautiful and a believer. She played Mary, Mother of Jesus, in the Easter play at Oklahoma City's Nob Hill Baptist Church. But most of all, she was a good mother to 5-year-old Kylie and 8-year-old Erica.
Well, hopefully they'll find her soon, because just waiting for me is just agony. Just not, I know she's gone, but I would just like to put her to rest.
So for now, waiting families turn their attention to lights of love, the sign of hope from strangers.
The other day, there was just everyone had their lights on, and really helped me a little bit, knowing that people do care. And seeing the flags half mast shows respect for everyone, affected by this tragedy.
People like Peggy Holland. In the Easter play, a crucified Jesus rested in her arms. Now, it's Peggy's turn to rest in the arms of her Savior. Eventually, Peggy Holland's body was among the 167 others recovered before the building was brought down.
We have come here in shared sorrow to grieve the loss of beloved neighbors, to honor brave comrades, to join our souls in close communion with God.
Eagle's wings, bear you on the breath of dawn.
If anybody thinks that Americans are mostly mean and selfish, they ought to come to Oklahoma.
And so the hurting hearts left behind find strength in their faith and in each other as they somehow go on after such great loss.
Remember the trust of the children. Darkness will not have its day. Take hold of my hands, and we'll both understand that the children will show you the way.
The smoke hadn't even settled yet, and I was just going, good Lord, this is just complete. This is complete death, These people didn't deserve this,
I've never seen the likes of those poor little kids.
They're all buried under there still. We can't get to the kids.
Joey Fansler was supposed to roof a house on April 19th. Instead, he walked straight into the halls of hell.
That was the devil's hand, casting a dagger of death into the heart of the United States of America.
They reached out their hands and opened their hearts. They seemed to come from everywhere, but nowhere in particular. We call them heroes now, these hundreds and hundreds of Oklahomans, in suits and in uniforms. Just ordinary people, really, until 9:02 April 19th. In the minutes and the hours and the days after, they were extraordinary.
Here. Yeah, just sit right here.
We gotta find his brother.
Okay, don't worry about his brother.
I found 3 or 4 of the little guys, Bless their little hearts, They were just, they never knew a thing, though, It was all over so fast. They never felt a hint of pain. It was just like a candle. It's burning and then it's gone. They were with God after that,
We kept taking the babies out and just putting them in their own playground. We had to lay them in their own playground and they couldn't play anymore.
I really wanted to find somebody alive. I really wanted to be able to help somebody continue to live their life by getting them out.
And so they accept the title hero with reluctance.
I think a hero is somebody that does something that nobody else would do. And I saw lots of policemen in there. I saw lots of firemen going in there. I saw lots of civilians going in that building. Something that everybody does doesn't make you a hero. It's something that nobody else will do.
And on that Wednesday morning, everyone did something. But there were scant few lives left to save. Many rescuers would dig through the rubble and find only frustration. The lucky ones saved a tiny life.
Just went and tried to see if I could be of assistance in some kind of a way.
Do you know who you're holding right now?
No.
Newsline 9's Kelly Ogle tells us another hero's story.
Got out of the car and started heading towards the federal building. We began running into individuals that were injured.
Gruesome murder scenes, terrible traffic accidents. Detective Don Hull had seen everything, or so he thought, before April 19th. The horror unfolding in the bombed-out federal building overwhelmed even the most experienced officers.
I remember looking up to the third floor, and there was a gentleman seated that was calling out for help that had lost both of his legs.
Detective Hull knew there was a daycare center in the building and about where it should have been. He and several others climbed over a mountain of rubble, determined to find the bombing's youngest victims.
I could hear whimpering and crying and moaning. And you just kept moving towards the sounds.
Hull found 5 children who were already dead. And then, under 3 feet of concrete, steel, and trash, he uncovered a tiny foot.
The last child that I located was Joseph Weber.
But the boy wasn't breathing, and his arm was twisted behind him in a sickening position.
I gently took his left arm and started to move it around to the front of his body, and as I did, he kind of gasped and jerked and started to cry.
We will get a car to take him to a hospital if we need to.
Hall clutched the little boy's body to his, using his chest to apply pressure to a huge cut on the child's face. He headed toward the ambulances.
As I approached this area, I heard a woman's voice screaming that was my baby. That in and of itself terrified me, that this mother is about to encounter her child in this condition, and I honestly didn't think he was going to make it.
Several times, little Joseph stopped breathing, and Detective Hall got him going again until finally the medics took over. Hall left Joseph in an ambulance and returned to search the bombed-out building for more victims.
I was told later that he didn't make it, which just totally crushed me. For the evening, I thought I could have ran faster, I could have this, I could have that, but I was watching the news like everybody else, and I saw Dan. And I recognized him, and I went, wait a minute, this is the father of the little boy that we got out and got started. And so I immediately called the hospital, and I said, please tell me that this is the little boy and that he's okay. And he was. This is a full-grown Simba, which means he has to become full-grown.
2 days later, the hero, armed with a stuffed animal, visited Joseph's parents at Children's Hospital.
I'm so glad that he's okay.
I'm so glad that you were there, because he wouldn't be if you hadn't been there.
They are uncomfortable being called heroes, these men in blue. They say it was their training that took over. It's our job, they told us. But it was more than that. It was compassion and courage and gallantry. It was Oklahoma City's finest in their finest hour.
Heroes. Some saved lives. Hundreds tried to. Thousands did whatever they could. They gave their blood and their sweat. And of course, they gave their tears. They brought flowers and they planted trees. And they tied ribbons of hope around our state and wrapped bandages around the wounded. Newsline 9's Robin Marsh tells us about one of the Angels of Mercy.
It was bad. My first feeling was I don't know what happened, but it's really bad, and a lot of people are hurt.
having a seizure. She is. She's going to need a chair.
Stretcher. She's got a seizure.
Controlled chaos at St. Anthony Hospital shortly after the bomb blast in downtown Oklahoma City. In the middle of it all, Nurse Elizabeth Collier. The biggest pressure to ever face this 15-year veteran. Find the space in the hospital to care for the hundreds of injured patients heading her way.
At any one point in time, we had between 300 and 500 people in our emergency room drive. So being able to triage patients, family members, and volunteers from community-wide to the correct areas became very important so that we could free up the driveway to take care of the patients. We also had multiple staff members, physicians and nurses, and the hall was filled with supplies so that we could triage.
A month later, life in the ER, and for Nurse Collier, is a bit more normal. But there are things about April 19th that will haunt her for a lifetime.
It's wherever I went, whether it was to the outpatient clinic, here in the emergency room, or in our intensive care unit, I remember the crunch of the glass under my feet.
A talented nurse who triumphed under pressure, a rescuer who defines a true hero.
And I don't think there were one or two heroes that day. I think there were thousands. And I'm honored to be included in that group.
From that day through the many to follow, Oklahoma's heroes did what came naturally, their very best.
I was standing in front of the building, and I was just in total awe as the amount of destruction that had occurred. And at that point, I still didn't know what had happened. I didn't know that it was a truck bomb or car bomb. All I knew is that there were a lot of people hurt, and there was a great amount of destruction that had occurred.
They were desperate to hear a sound of life somewhere in the vast silence of death.
I was down in the basement, and I had asked everyone to be quiet in hopes that when I yelled, I would get a response from somebody, and I did. And there happened to be a lady that was trapped under there. And I'm not really exactly sure how long it took us to get her out, but we were down there for quite some time. And once we started getting the debris moved, it was pretty evident there was about 18 inches of water that she was laying in. And I had to remove my helmet and crawl under some of the debris to get underneath there with her. And I asked her what her name was. I told her who I was, and I held her hand and told her that we were going to get her out.
At that time, it was a lot of hope. I mean, you know, the hope of finding somebody, and that early on, you know, everybody was really high-spirited, and I mean, just working just hard and fast as you could go.
And once we got her out, I turned around, and the rest of the rescue workers that were down there had cleared a path from where we were all the way to the door on the east side of the building. And it was just like walking in a supermarket, walking through an aisle. That's how good of a job they had done for us.
While Bobby Lax and his crew were working to free the woman in the basement, Mike Shannon and his men were in a place they nicknamed the Cave.
They had to work single file, coming through the crack into here. They would move a rock, and they would pass the rock back and forth, and they would find the people. Back in here is where they were all compiled, and about 8 people in this one spot. I mean, literally touching each other. So the men had to work through each victim as they worked their way to the one behind them, to the one behind them, and so forth.
It was dangerous work in a tiny space in the dark, death all around.
Teams one after another would crawl back in here and work like this for hours at a time, and they'd pass out body parts, they'd pull the victims past them and pass them out.
I'm not gonna lie to you, I was scared. Probably my biggest fear was having a secondary collapse and myself being buried.
Through the horror, their hope remained. Surely, somewhere, someone was still alive.
Yeah, we was looking for voids that there might possibly be survivors in.
The concrete was just so compacted, it seemed like an endless chore, and we were able to find a few voids, but unfortunately there weren't any survivors in them.
And after the first night, there would be no more. But the rescuers continued to cling to the hope as the hours and the days and the weeks dragged on.
It takes quite a bit to become a hero, you know, and I just don't think I've done enough to be called a hero or considered a hero.
After more than 2 weeks, all that could be done had been. On May 5th, the search for victims stopped. Hope had finally vanished, but the heroes of the Heartland came back for one last look and a final farewell. They had all been here before, when times were frantic and the search desperate. They came back this last time in silence, lost in 1,000 thoughts.
The most beautiful memorial left by anyone is not in the rubble of this building, but in the hearts and the lives that knew them and loved them. We come today to remember their lives, and we come today to offer thanks. Thanks for the hundreds and hundreds of people who were involved in the rescue and recovery efforts.
As the anguished sound of a lone trumpet filled still air,
we didn't have any idea what was going on downtown. I thought it was just like a gas explosion.
Holy cow. About a third of the building has been blown away.
It was kind of scary. I mean, basically what I was seeing was just footage from Beirut or somewhere. I mean, this wasn't here. This wasn't Oklahoma City.
It looks like something you'd see on the evening news in Europe.
So many images from the days and weeks following the bombing will never be forgotten, especially for those who actually captured the moments on videotape.
Well, I fight being emotional at the time because I see it in black and white, but seeing it now, I cry a lot. I see Bailey Allman's mother, and I see the images of the child. I see the other families that have lost children. I see the cemeteries that I've seen throughout the year.
Photojournalist Larry Lockman captured another memorable image from April 19th, that of a rescue worker holding tight to the little boy he'd just pulled from the rubble. That rescue worker didn't want to let go, and as Newsline 9's Angela Buckaloo tells us, he's still not letting go 1 year later.
Joseph Weber and Chelsea and Katie Hull share more than just a swing. They'll share the rest of their lives.
Best sound in the whole world.
They might not have ever met had the girl's father not saved Joseph's life a year ago. Bloodied, but breathing.
Sheer terror. I was afraid this child would die. I was afraid of what his parents were seeing.
In fact, it wasn't until late the night of April 19th that Sergeant Hull realized Joseph had lived.
It was just this one little boy that stuck with him that, gosh, you know, if we had just gotten there quicker, if we'd gotten there sooner, if we'd done this stuff, you know, really beating yourself over things you couldn't control. And then to find out he was okay, you know, it's kind of like, okay, you know, we made a difference somewhere.
2 days later, he visited Dan and Dawn as they waited in the hospital.
This is a full-grown Simba, which means he has to become full-grown.
As you can see, his injuries have healed. His broken arm, blown-out eardrums, and shattered jaw are back in working order. Only a scar on his cheek could tell you this little boy survived the worst terrorist act in the United States.
Very fortunate, very blessed, I think, because as you've seen, I mean, Joseph's very healthy kid, and most of his injuries have healed up 100%, and he's just an ornery 2-year-old kid. Don and his family are definitely close to ours, and even in a way part of our family, I think, now.
You know, our girls were always curious and asking, and you know, I think it's very good for our girls to be able to see Joseph like this instead of the images that they're always seeing. And as you can tell, they're having a blast.
He is a lucky little boy. Don may be his hero, but after seeing unspeakable carnage last April 19th, this little boy is his hero's hero.
I have no idea what it would be like without having that light at the end of the tunnel. I hope the very best for him, and that he has a chance that some of the children will never have.
Little Joseph Weber will soon have company in the family. His parents are expecting a new baby this summer.
One of the images from the bombing that's come to symbolize the urgency of the rescue in the hour immediately after the explosion.
And while most people might not recognize the name Brian Espy, they will forever remember his ordeal.
Up until 9:02, it was just pretty much a normal morning.
On April 19, 1995, Dr. Brian Espy was working on a project in the conference room at the Department of Agriculture inside the federal building. He was only about 35 feet from his own office, but that distance saved his life. That's when his normal morning came crashing down as the building fell in around him.
And then when I pulled myself up from there, I could see daylight where prior to that there'd been walls. And then I started to look around for, any signs of anybody else. And of course, to the west of me, there was nothing. I mean, there was a 5-story drop, and you could see right up to the sky.
The explosion killed 7 employees in his office and left Espy and 2 others stranded on the 5th floor.
He just did a real job of talking me down.
Dr. Espy and the others were rescued a short time later by Oklahoma City firefighters. This image was seen over and over around the world, and it's how Espy's family found out he'd survived the blast. He says it's a miracle he wasn't killed, and that has changed the way he looks at life.
My entire staff of about 7 people is gone.
A lot of the things that probably I was thinking about were important the day I went to work on the 19th probably weren't all that important, and family and friends are more important. And I hope we always remember that.
And his friends now include the firefighters who rescued him. He visits with them at least once a month. And strangers who saw Espy's rescue have also reached out to him. When it was reported in a Pennsylvania newspaper that Espy lost a favorite Amish coffee mug in the bombing, replacements came flooding in.
Outpouring of kindness, I think that's what I want to remember about the 19th, that Oklahoma, people saw Oklahoma at its best, and I think we set a standard for the rest of the country on how neighbors help neighbors and people do whatever they have to in time of a crisis. I get a feeling that Oklahoma City is a much closer community now than they were before the 19th.
Dr. Espy says the anniversary of the bombing will bring back some difficult memories.
But he says he does plan to commemorate the day in a private ceremony. Tomorrow, he and others from his office who survived will pay tribute to the 7 who did not.
Perhaps the hardest to take for anybody with a little one at home were the images of fear on the faces of children caught up in the violence. Among them, little James and William Green, who were pulled from the Y Daycare Center.
When Randy Renner and I arrived on the scene that day, we stared in disbelief at the activity going on around us. We couldn't believe what was happening. And of the hundreds and hundreds of images that we recorded that day, the one that is etched in my mind most is of a young boy being carried by an EMSA worker. And looking in his face, you couldn't see any emotion, but in his eyes you could sense the fear and the desire to be taken to a safe place. And what really has touched my heart was when the EMSA employee was going to set him down to be treated. His little hand was resting on her shoulder, and it got tighter and tighter and tighter, and he didn't want to let go. And this lesson I've taken to heart, that if you are afraid, if you are in trouble, that it is okay to reach out and hang on, because especially here in Oklahoma, there'll be plenty of people filled with love and compassion that will be there to hold on to you.
Okay, now honey, let's go ahead and put this harness on. One arm through there, and one through the other side.
For one young woman, the lesson of that moment was not about holding on.
Well, the adrenaline is pumping,
and she's a little bit nervous.
It was about letting go.
We've had an explosion. We need help. It's in the fire department.
When the bomb went off, Allie Hatton was 100 feet from ground zero, with her class of 2-year-olds inside the YMCA daycare center.
I need EMS in front of the YMCA. We got several injuries.
I was sitting in the library area reading a story at the time that it happened, and it kind of knocked us away from the wall and stuff was falling down on us.
We need all fire ambulances you can get.
Unaware she was injured herself, Allie's main concern was getting a seriously hurt little boy named James to the hospital with his older brother William.
James, everything's going to be okay. And I found him, and I made sure that the two went to the hospital together, and that I went to the hospital with them so I could make sure they had a name, so they weren't a John Doe. And then, of course, once we got to the hospital, and you know, I'm seeing it on TV, and I'm already safe, and I can see my coworkers and some children still down there, and that was really tough. There you go.
And so is she.
Okay, I'm watching.
A year later, Allie is still working for the Y.
You know, I've got to be here to be there, be strong for the kids. Come on, climb up the stairs.
But much else about her life has changed.
I'm a doer now. I like to do things and try new things.
Everything's in place. We're ready to go skydive?
Ready.
Let's go do it.
So I decided to go skydiving.
Are you nervous? I am, are you?
It was quite an experience. In fact, I told my instructor it was going to be the second scariest moment in my life.
Step on in, Ellie.
Facing one helped Allie face the other.
They should be coming around any time.
It was a little scary. You're holding on to the plane, and then, of course, you have to let go.
I don't see them anywhere. They may have gone to Dallas instead.
After that moment of letting go, I wasn't afraid. It was very serene, very peaceful. It was like you were flying.
I think it kind of gives her a little perspective in life. If she can handle this, I think she kind of feels like she can handle about anything that comes her way.
All the way.
You know, you have nothing but time.
There you go. What do you think, Ellie?
Ah, that was great.
Good job.
But you never know when it's your time.
We're happy to report tonight that James and William Green are doing fine, and the Y Daycare Center will soon be getting a new permanent home.
On that first day, there was no shortage of sights to break the heart.
And yet in the midst of all that suffering, there was one sight that lifted the spirits of the emergency workers. It was the American flag.
Gan Matthews has the story of firefighters who found it and flew it.
Mark Molman and Mike Walker are hazmat technicians with the Oklahoma City Fire Department. But on April 19th, they labored in search and rescue at the Murrah building. They were looking for survivors on one of the lower floors when Molman found a tattered American flag.
Pretty bad shape. I'd say 50–60% was left of the flag. You know, it was still clear what it was. By no means, you know, was it that destroyed, but you know, it was Old Glory.
Well, he handed it to me at first, and I said, you know, we ought to hang this up. He said, yeah, we ought to.
Using plastic pipe as a pole, Mike Walker hung the flag over the scene. He and Molman meant to send a message.
At that time, we thought maybe it was somebody from a foreign country, maybe the Middle East, you know, getting revenge on the United States. So we wanted to let them know that you know, we were still here.
The flag lifted the spirits of the emergency workers in the early hours of the recovery work. Then it vanished.
I know it was there for a few days, and then you know, it was kind of forgot about, at least by me, and then later on in the week, you know, I turned around and remember glancing back up, and it was gone.
Gone, but not forgotten.
Nothing could have ever prepared the heroes of Oklahoma City for the terrible task they faced.
From firefighters to police officers to housewives, all contributed the best they knew how.
As a pool photographer, I was allowed to go down to the bomb site to give the public a first close look at the devastation and the rescue that was going on down there. And I can remember just standing at the bottom of the Alfred P. Murrah building, looking up and seeing this huge crater that enveloped these tiny little rescue workers. And I think for me it was the first time that you could actually see how much damage, how much devastation this thing caused. But you know, I think the thing that really got me the most were the rescue workers, down on their hands and knees, moving one stone at a time, giving each other a helping hand or a word of comfort. And I think that's what the rescue was all about, people helping other people. There was unity there from the beginning. That spirit continues today.
The Oklahoma City Fire Department has become a national symbol of strength in the past year.
And while it would be impossible to introduce you to every hero, Demi Capral does have the story of one man who led rescuers through the rubble through unspeakable destruction.
I remember thinking after I'd been in there for a couple hours that we're going to be here forever.
Firefighter Mike Shannon led the search through the twisted remains of the Murrah building.
There was just so much to do.
The tangled tunnels of destruction stretched Shannon and his comrades to new emotional and physical levels.
The space was just so small that not very many could get in there. You had to depend on your partner to pull your feet, to pull you out from underneath some things.
288 hours of back-breaking, heart-wrenching 16 days. Through it all, Shannon remembers the good things, his fellow firefighters enduring risk of duty.
The friendship, the camaraderie, you know, watch tremendous men do tremendous things. And you got to see it daily.
A year later, Shannon's daily tasks keep him at his desk a lot. A few pictures, his ID badge full of pins, remind him of the tragedy. But the adjustment's been tough. He keeps key souvenirs in a crate. Up until only a few months ago, though, he carried around the Murrah map and victims list. Shannon was in charge of directing rescuers and crossed off names from this list as the victims were found.
It was the guide.
But the building was gone.
Right.
Why were you still carrying it around?
Because it becomes such an important thing. Without it in the building was like going on vacation without a road map.
Shannon says many involved in rescue and recovery still face a tough road ahead as they're uncomfortable being thrust into history.
We didn't do anything behind the fence that we weren't expected to do or what we weren't paid to do.
From all that firefighters were called to do, Shannon says many now appreciate the important things in life, and so do their loved ones.
My wife likes me better after than before.
Before April 19th, Shannon was a big fan of Civil War heroes. Now, all he has to do is look around his office to see faces of courage.
A lot of character, a lot of honor, and their outstanding courage, fearlessness.
Mike Shannon says that he and many of his co-workers will carry the memories of their days at the bomb site like scars of war.
There was more to the rescues than firefighters and police. Medical teams from all over the state mobilized to care for the wounded. That made a big and lasting impact on TV9 photojournalist Jim Lipscomb. He was at St. Anthony Hospital soon after disaster struck.
It seems like there was so much focus in the people that were doing the emergency work. They just seemed to know exactly what they were doing, though there's people coming right and left. No one was getting upset, and we're just pulling together. And it was just everyone was getting these people into the hospital and getting them treated as fast as they could. They seemed so focused and confident in what they were doing.
One of the rescuers wouldn't make it out alive. Nurse Rebecca Anderson was in the prime of her life, 37 years old. Eyewitnesses say she was able to help some victims out of the building before she suffered a severe head injury, possibly from falling debris. Her legacy of giving continues today. Family and friends have established a scholarship in her name. We told you earlier about that American flag found by two firefighters in the Murrah building rubble. It wasn't the only flag found.
There were flags in practically every office on every floor, and the heroes who found them weren't always wearing uniforms.
Gan Matthews has our story.
And we've seen the cloud, you know, and Terry and I jumped in my truck.
These men of Allied Steel put in hundreds of hours in the rescue operation. On the second or third day, no one can remember now, some of them found a flag on the 5th floor.
You could tell it had, you know, had been through some disaster. It was torn and it was soiled, but it looked at one time to have been a very expensive, nice flag with gold trim around the border.
Soon the flag was flying from Allied's crane. It was Mike Youngberg who put it there.
This flag means a lot to me, and a lot of other people lost their lives to defend it, you know, and those people are involved in working for the government, and you know, they're defending the flag as well.
After a few days, Allied Steel took the flag down for safekeeping. Then, at the urging of the Oklahoma Historical Society, the Bureau of Alcohol, Tobacco, and Firearms tracked it down.
We felt that it was important that the first flag from the building be preserved for all the citizens of Oklahoma to come and to look at it and to remember.
On April 24th, at the bomb site, the flag was formally presented to Governor and Mrs. Keating by Allied Steel and ATF. It's now on display in the Blue Room at the state capitol, scars and all, preserved for all of us, lest we forget.
The images that were being played out before our camera was almost like a movie. Of course, we knew that it wasn't. It was later found out the largest terrorist attack on our country's soil. So what was our reason to be there? Well, it's pretty simple, really. We had to document history and to let people know, let the world know what hate and anger will do. I believe another image that I'll never forget is that of Rocky Yardley and his son. I mean, how many of us didn't hold our kids just a little bit tighter and appreciate things just a little bit more? Another image that we'll never forget is the president at the Murrow site just a few days ago laying a wreath there. The real story, though, was the kids, the children, the survivors of the bombing. In a way, they symbolize what we're, you know, Oklahoma City in the United States is no matter what you do, we will go on.
Healing has been a longer process than many hoped, but it began before the dust had settled downtown.
Neighbor reached out to neighbor, strangers became friends, and from calamity grew common ground.
We discovered that unity felt good and worked well. A tough lesson learned and one too easily forgotten. We close tonight with a reminder.
Thanks for joining us.
Good night.
It was about 9 days after the bombing. Everyone was totally worn out. And some members from the Christian Life Missionary Baptist Church came to sing to the rescue workers. And the music was just so powerful. And we had seen acts of kindness before a lot, but for me, this was special. For the first time, for me personally, I felt a sense of hope. It was just singing. It was a simple song, but through the song, we got a sense of joy, a sense of love, and a sense of God. And after it was over, there was so much love spread around. There was hugging and crying and the shaking of hands. It was just something so overwhelming. And for me, that's one moment that I'll just never forget.
It seemed like they had just brought a child in, just an hour or so before my shift change ended, and that was, those were always hard.
Hard for searchers who turned up the tiny bodies, and for the chaplains like Bobby Allstat trying to lend comfort.
One of the chaplains came down and said, Reverend, we need you. They're very low today.
For 9 days, Reverend J.L. Jacobs led a group from his Christian Life Missionary Baptist Church to sang and offered solace from outside the perimeter fence. On this day, they were finally called inside.
Just calls and snares.
As I began to walk up, I can remember shedding some tears because God had given his endorsement. And we became God of love. He just did that.
Bless her heart. She doesn't know how to this whole
why.
happened on American soil, the largest terrorist attack in U.S. history. And on this now sacred soil, we raise a nation's lasting tribute, the Oklahoma City National Memorial. Thousands are joining forces to complete this national shrine. Call 1-888-542-HOPE to share a place in history on American soil.